Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher is here today, and it's brought to you by the Gallery Bar Book and Games, Ocean Casino Resort. All football season long. We'll be there every Monday. Cheers your favorite drinks while cheering on your favorite team. Go to the Gallery and Ocean Casino Resort. Go for the win. For more info, visit theoceanac.com. You must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hey, I want to congratulate our latest qualifier for the Eagles Club Box tickets. That's Jack in Vineland. So, Jack, congratulations to you, and we'll see you at our big party happy hour Friday show. Coming up on October 28th, we're going to be live at Garden State Beer Company. Geoff Mosher's here from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds pregame show, Inside the Birds podcast, and they do it all, man. And we got Eagles, Cardinals. It's Cardinals all over the place this weekend, Geoff.
Could be a very bad weekend for Cardinals against Philadelphia.
That's
teams.
right.
That's all I'm saying.
That is correct, sir. All right, let's look a little here. I want to get some thoughts on, the depth of this team from, as one of the underrated reasons why this team is so good is really the depth of this team. And that was kind of on display in their win against Jacksonville. And it might need to be on display again this week to beat this Arizona team.
Yeah, it might be, Mike, because there are some injuries here that I wouldn't classify as long-term injuries. You don't worry that they're going to be 3 to 4 week injuries, but there are some injuries that you worry about this Sunday in Arizona. Your left tackle, your right guard, your kicker, your slot corner, all of them. So we can talk about that. But depth has been depth in the trenches, especially. When you don't have a kicker, you just got to hope for the best, and you hope that the guy that you signed here, in this case Cameron Dicker, is up to the challenge of it. But really, when you lose 2 offensive linemen, and you can play one of them, Jack Driscoll, at a position on the line that he's never played, which is left tackle. And then you can plug a guy like Sua Opeta, who has been one of your projects for a couple of years in at right guard, and still be able to rush for 200 yards against a team that was ranked number 1 against the run defense, albeit early. That's a testament to the depth and the talent that they have at that position. And if you were going to pick one area, if you're an NFL team and you want to pick one area where you can say, I am the deepest here, it's going to be on the line, either offensive or defensive line.
Yeah, I know that you think about Dillard. Well, I want to get your thoughts on Dillard because he got put into the practice window. But Driscoll was the 3rd left tackle. How many teams can go to their 3rd left tackle and handle that? I mean, I think that's pretty big. And you mentioned that Sayamala got hurt, and that flew under the radar because Sua Opeta came in and they didn't really miss a beat. So I think that the Eagles, I had once said, if you took the Eagles' 5 reserves and started them, they would be better than a lot of teams starting 5.
Yeah, they could be. I mean, I don't know if that's really true or not, but I mean, I get the point. It's not high. Some of these guys, I think, like a Driscoll or an Opeta, can go in and look better than they are, or make a mistake here and there that gets masqueraded by the fact that they're surrounded by an all-pro right tackle, an all-pro center, or an emerging left guard, because I think Landon Dickerson had an amazing game this past Sunday against the Jaguars. So all those resources that the Eagles put into offensive line obviously pay dividends for them. There's also the I think, discussed part of Jeff Stoutland. He's often referred to and looked at as a great offensive line coach and a great talent developer on the offensive line, which is fair and accurate. But when I speak to people about, the Eagles' game plan, their concepts, their run designs, we forget that he's also the run game coordinator, and he's a big part of their play design. So when you see certain plays that leave whether it's linemen pulling or trapping or doing certain, protections that give them a lot of space to run, a lot of that goes to Jeff Stoutland too, which is not something I think that everybody understands, like how vital he is to the creation of the game plan every weekend. And again, I will say this till I die. I get that he's not the youngest guy in the world, but I can't imagine. I don't understand why he never gets kind of discussed or looked at as a potential head coach, especially because of his ability to relate to players who aren't just offensive linemen. He has a big personality. He's a leader of men, but that's for another day. But the funny thing is, to your point on the depth, Mike, people were like kind of clapping at me and Kaplan as a joke because last week we said, hey, with Dillard out, what would happen? And with LaRaven Clark signed off the Eagles practice squad to the Titans, what would happen if Mailata got hurt? Because then you'd have to play Jack Driscoll at left tackle. We actually said that. And then we said, and then that puts you just one injury away from one of these practice squad tackles like Roderick Johnson being in the game. So amazingly, Mailata does get hurt and Driscoll does have to play left tackle. And the crazy part of this discussion is, Mike, that they were deeper on the offensive line about 3 weeks ago, but that's 4 weeks ago. That's taking a hit with losing Clark, with losing they lost Coyote Awosika and they lost Jack Anderson when they decided to keep Josh Sills. So imagine being the Eagles. You're known for depth. You lose 3 key backups, 4 if you want to include Nate Herbig when you decided to rescind the tender.
True.
And then you're still this good on the offensive line.
Yeah. Oh, it's to me, I think that's one of the I was saying earlier, nobody likes to pound their chest as, we have a lot of depth. Like, that's not a reason to be excited generally. It's like, hey, we're explosive. The Eagles have the most explosive offense in the league. Hey, we've got playmakers on defense. They have the most sacks in the league, the most 3-and-outs in the league. But they also probably have the best 53, the deepest team maybe in the league right now, and I think that's undervalued. What about the game that Jalen Hurts has and kind of his evolution, 9.1 yards a carry, how much that's all kind of playing into the game that he's playing, and what are other teams kind of almost daring him to try to do?
I think the last 2 weeks, what you've seen with the game plans by the Jags in a limited doses because there wasn't a whole lot of passing and not a lot of downfield passing because of the rainstorm. And then before that, Washington, you've seen teams try to come after him more than the Vikings did. All right. The Vikings just sat there and thought that he played soft coverage and dared him to pick them apart, and he did. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of those kind of attack plans. Washington came after him a little bit more. Same thing with Jacksonville. There was a lot of post-snap movement with Jacksonville. They showed cover 1, they showed cover 2, they showed cover 2, then played cover 3. They showed some man, they showed some zone. But again, there just wasn't that much passing from either team to really kind of discuss how intricate those schemes were and whether or not they worked. This was a game where the Eagles said, we're going to run the ball and down your throats, and they did. And Jacksonville really was powerless to stop it. And I always look at this as a very rare kind of luxury. Like when you take other good teams, if they're not doing well with what they normally do, I don't know that they have this kind of fallback plan where they can just say, fine, whatever we're doing is not working, or the weather sucks today, we're just going to run it down your throats, right? Yeah. You have, like you mentioned, you have to have great offensive line play, great depth, and to be able to do that.
It reminded me a lot of the game in the snow where they just said, the heck with it. We're just going to run it all game long, and you can't stop us. They ended up running the ball 50 times the other day. I mean, who runs the ball 50 times and with that kind of success? I mean, that just kind of shows you. Now, the question is, I don't know how good of a defensive front or stoppage, but statistically speaking, Jacksonville was pretty good. Where will they be by the end of the year? I don't know, but they ran over that team. I mean, and I think it was, look, the Eagles' offensive line, they're grown men. They've got some veteran guys who maul you up front. They've got some young, athletic guys. I mean, I think Dickerson, they said, had 8 pancakes the other day. I mean, he's just squashing guys out there. Mailata, who's just, obviously didn't play, but when he's out there, I mean, that offensive line is grown men playing against a younger Jacksonville team who's kind of trying to find their way in this league right now.
I'll also tell you what I think was most impressive about this one, even compared to maybe last year's New Orleans game where they also ran for over 200 yards against the number 1 ranked rush defense, is that this time Jalen Hurts was not a huge part of that running game. Yes, he had a running touchdown, and he did extend he ran for 38 total yards.
Yeah,
but he ran 16 times. That's an average of some 2-point-something a rush. That's very low. If you just took Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, and Trey Sermon and added up their carries, I think it was 34 carries for something like 172 yards. It's 5 yards a carry. Right. So they did amazing just as a conventional running team. Without, they didn't need the Jalen Hurts run to be great at running.
No, you're absolutely right about that. Is that a dimension of their offense was not really utilized on Sunday, which is Jalen Hurts. Now I want to ask you about the other guy that they're going to see this week in Kyler Murray. he will be the most active running quarterback that they will face maybe all season, certainly up to this point. He is way different than Goff, Cousins, Wentz, and Trevor Lawrence. So is their defense set up? Do they have the personnel to kind of defend a guy like this, or are they more set up for a more statuesque pocket passer?
I mean, I don't know if anybody has the quote-unquote personnel to be able to handle the impromptu, chaotic scrambling ability of Kyler Murray. Just like, the Eagles have faced some pretty good teams with athletic front sevens like the Lions, and I would say Jacksonville had some really good athletes at linebacker. And who knows what would have happened if Jalen – well, I guess you could say, hey, they had the personnel to keep Jalen from really exploding with big runs. But like the Saints have a very good run defense and athletic front seven, and they had trouble against Jalen last year. So my concern for the Eagles with Kyler Murray and his ability to keep plays alive is that the Eagles play a lot of matchup zone concepts on defense, pattern matching. So that basically keeps their coverage linebackers, their interior defenders, your slot corner, your safety, one of your safeties, usually kind of working together in the middle of the field to eliminate all those crossing routes and shallow crosses and overs. But that does leave single coverage on the outside.
Right.
So if Kyler Murray wants to pull the trigger, but he doesn't like what he sees going over the middle because the Eagles are really sticky, and he starts running out of the pocket, and he's good at keeping his eyes downfield, he's going to find one-on-ones with Marquise Brown, and I guess Rondale Moore is back, and Zach Ertz can still hit you vertically. He'll find some one-on-ones on the perimeter that he might be able to take advantage of.
Well, this is a game, I think, the linebackers have been getting a lot of praise, and they should. They've done a great job. But this could be the week where you need to really see your linebacker play and what kind of, tackling they have in the open field, that kind of stuff. Because this is where the linebackers on that second level, I think Zach Ertz against possibly Josiah Scott could be an issue if they split him out. And then if he gets free and if Murray starts moving, those linebackers are going to come. So this might be the big week for the Eagles linebackers, even though we all think they've done. And look, TJ Edwards, I said a couple weeks ago, I thought has been the glue to this defense. But this might be their biggest challenge for the linebackers.
Yeah, I would think so. Linebackers, even some safeties, because like you said, Zach Ertz is still crafty, can still get the job done. And really, it's a challenge, like I mentioned, for the perimeter corners in their one-on-ones. If Darius Slay can't go and they need it's got to be Zach McPherson, then you're a little concerned. The one area that the Eagles really aren't deep is outside corner. They've got Slay and Bradbury, and they're both fantastic, but I don't know if they're ready for McPherson to be able to just spell one of those guys and feel like they can be as effective with what they do defensively.
Yeah. One thing, too, and I think you might have talked or wrote about Hassan Reddick over at InsideTheBirds.com, and how do you think he's tying in what he's done the last couple of weeks? Is that not affecting in a bad way, but bringing more out of Fletcher Cox? Because we looked at Fletcher Cox, we thought maybe he was getting to the end of the line. He's had a really good season, but how much of that is because of the attention that some of these other guys are now getting that the team can't put so much on Fletcher Cox?
It's a great question. I mean, you'd have to almost be inside Fletcher Cox's head to really know that. I think with Fletch, based on people who know him well and have either coached him or presided over him in the building for a while, they've always felt that there's an element of his game that needs to be coaxed out at times. That when he wants to be great, he's great, and that he did not have a good first game of the year. Everybody knows that, and nobody on the D-line did, and he got a lot of criticism for it. And there's a school of thought that might have awakened him a little and got under his skin, because ever since then he's been a pretty good player. So that I would believe that more than the fact that Hassan Reddick's getting attention, because if you look at Fletch, I mean, he's been on a lot of good defensive lines, and a lot of guys have gotten attention, whether it was last year, Hargrave, going back to, Josh Sweat has gotten attention, Chris Long. I mean, Michael Bennett was a big personality guy that came and played here in 2018. So, I mean, he's kind of accustomed, I would think, by now to be playing next to guys on the line who have big personalities and get a lot of attention.
Well, and last year, he kind of dipped, but, Brandon Graham was gone for most of the year last year. So, again, less attention on 55, more on 91. But I'm wondering how much do we like the way that John Gannon is use Reddick in the early going. Hey, why are they putting him back in coverage? Well, we haven't seen as much of that, still a little bit, but the way that Gannon has utilized Reddick.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, leads the NFL. So he's not stationary. He's not static. They do move him around. Do I think there's capacity to potentially use him even more creatively, twisting, stunting, delayed blitzes? Yeah, there probably is. But we're only 4 weeks into the season, and I don't know too many defensive coordinators that like to play the whole hand in the first quarter of the year. They like to kind of develop a guy as he goes along. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to be patient with that as well.
Yeah, I know that we take a look at this offense. John McMullen asked me this morning on their show, Birds 365, if I was the coordinator for Arizona, who's the guy on the Eagles that, what's your game plan? I said, quite frankly, what do you do? I mean, I guess you keep daring Jalen Hurts to be this MVP guy. And if he's going to be the MVP, then he's going to be the MVP. But if not, is there a certain game plan that you come in if you're Arizona? Because the one thing with Arizona, defensively, their numbers have been pretty good. I mean, I don't know what these stats through 4 weeks mean. They give up about 18 points a game. That's pretty solid. They don't give up a lot of yards. But I don't think, Watt's not the same player. Simmons has been a disappointment. They don't really have a standout guy on defense.
Yeah, I hate these. The looking at the ranking. Like today, I looked at the rankings, and I was surprised to see that Arizona is 5th in the NFL in stopping the run. Jacksonville was 1st in the NFL. They didn't do a very good job of it. You made the point that I think is really fair. It's at the end of the year, will these guys be top 5 teams, or is it just influenced by one game with a lot of stats, either pro or con, can influence what your average looks like over the course of 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
So I don't want to put too much into it. I don't know what Arizona's plan is. I think that they're a team right now that doesn't have much of an identity. Simmons is a guy that has not, this team cannot get it right with the linebackers that they picked, the athletic ones, because they didn't get it right with Hassan Reddick until it was too late. And it seems like Simmons is not being used maybe in his best capacity. I don't know. I would imagine that they're going to try to match his athleticism in some capacity to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket as best they can. Teams are starting to – I thought Jacksonville – again, there weren't that many passes, but when Jacksonville did pressure, it looked like they tried to pressure from either one side, specific side, to get him on the run, or from both edges to keep him within the pocket. And they had a Devin Lloyd or a Oluokun kind of lurking there to see if he was going to run forward.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the Cardinals themselves will be trying to figure that out, and they may have a better game plan because they have Kyler Murray. They know firsthand what it's like, their defense especially, to try to contain a running quarterback or a quarterback who can run.
Well, 425, you'll hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'll leave you with this. Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. Don't forget the Inside the Birds pre- and post-game show on all the Inside the Birds platforms. Trey Thomas on the post-game, Greg Cosell on the pregame show there. Q&A, you got that on the website as well. You can check out that on all the platforms. And Jeff and Adam and, of course, Andrew will be here tomorrow. Of all these Cardinals, which is the guy on offense that worries you with this matchup the most this week?
Probably Hollywood Brown. I was on record telling fantasy people to not draft James Conner, even though he had like 15 touchdowns last year, because if you really dove into his statistics, he averaged less than 4 yards per carry. So it seemed kind of flukish. It seemed like he was just pilfering some red zone touchdowns. So I don't fear their running game. I do fear what Kyler Murray can do if he gets out of the pocket and throws the ball deep to Marquise Brown. And I'll tell you really quickly, since I'm not going to be on with you until next week, Mike, one thing that I think Jacksonville did well from a concept standpoint, but not an application standpoint, because Trevor Lawrence really stunk, was they started to put a lot of bunch sets on one side, so that if you put 3 receivers on one side, then it's harder to, when you're playing that pattern matching zone, you don't know who's going where. And you saw they were able to catch Josiah Scott off guard a little bit. And you don't always have to run crossing routes. You can run fake crossing routes where the guy goes over and up. So I thought Jacksonville had a pretty good plan to attack what the Eagles do defensively. They just didn't carry it out well, and the rain had a lot to do with it. But it's going to be obviously in a dome this week. And, I would think that if Cliff Kingsbury saw that on tape, he might try to do some things to counteract what the Eagles have been doing well the last 2 weeks. So it wouldn't surprise me if Arizona had a good plan to move the ball through the air against the Eagles, especially if Maddox is out, and of course if Darius Slay is still out.
I'll ask you this, one more.
Yeah.
Detroit blitz the heck out of you. Do you take that approach if you're Arizona? Do you just say, you know what,
I
just
don't
go
think
after
you
him?
can do that. No, I just don't think you can leave A.J. Brown one-on-one like that. I mean, I think you've got to pressure him, but not all out, sell out the house, cover zero, leave the whole center field open. That to me is a recipe for disaster.
I agree. I just, everybody, they threw the house. Minnesota didn't do anything. You've seen a couple different varieties of things here. Do you just say, hey, let's get to a shootout and see if we can keep up? To throw that tactic. All right, well, Mosher's back on Monday. Mosher Monday. Tomorrow, Andrew Adams on Friday. Football at 4. And, of course, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast right here on the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher, take care, buddy.
All right, Mike, have a good one.